Like they lose track of time. It's literally just one more
Right.
hit from an instant to an instant. Like, well, just one more. I was doing that with fentanyl, and like, just it wouldn't go away, man. Like, I couldn't smoke myself into unconsciousness, which is what I was trying to do, and so I would just keep going. I ran out
Wow.
of time in the day at a certain point.
All right, welcome to another episode of Breaking Chains, A Sober Mindset. I'm Rodney Hood, and today we got all the way from California, Nate Decay. What's up, buddy?
What's up, Rodney? How you doing?
Good, man. You and I met back in rehab. I was actually there on my third week, I believe, and you had just came into the house that I was in. I don't know how long you were in there already, but so we only had a short week to hang out. But we talked a lot. You talked a lot, that's for sure. And so we had a short time to get to know each other. I couldn't wait to get you on the show and have you share some of your stories. So, you're are you originally from California, or that's just where you resided now?
Southern California. I'm from Riverside, but I've lived everywhere in the Inland Empire and recently in Orange County as well.
You got to share this amazing story. What happened after I had left rehab and you were still there? We kept in touch, but go ahead and tell the story from that point on that you told me, and it's an exciting one, folks.
About 20 days sober, I believe, when I went to the residential part of treatment, which is where I met you. And I was
Right.
there for almost 30 days. There's some crazy people there too. A lot of them were court ordered, and so you get a different breed of person there because they didn't really want to be there in the first place. But the alternative's
Right.
like 10 years in jail, and they're not really looking to do that either. But they're masters at self-sabotage, so you get crazy personalities. Let's just say that. I had a lot of cool people there, and then I moved to the Laguna Beach house. And I was right on the beach, Cliff Drive and Broadway, or Cliff Drive right by Broadway and PCH. Had it made, man. Didn't even like, I even knew actually how made I had it. Like, I would drive to the center every day and be like, man, I didn't realize that like going to rehab would get me on Laguna Beach. Like I fell upward in a
Right.
big way. And so I did that. I got a couple weeks of living there, but then I found a like a metal straw inside my car that my dad had cleaned it out when I went to rehab because that was a mess, man. That's another story. Before I went to rehab, I had used a little metal straw to smoke fentanyl, and I found that all the black stuff caked up in there, and my brain just kind of went crazy. And instead of calling a sponsor or calling literally anyone, I hit up my girlfriend who I met in rehab, and basically all I had to say was like fentanyl, and she was in just like I was because junkies, and yeah, so I went and got fentanyl from Riverside, which is like 30 miles away, but I knew where to get it, so that's where I went. And I didn't even have money. I had a little bit of gas in the car, and I recruited other people into my bullshit so that I could have money to buy the fentanyl, and I just had to share it because it'd be more than enough, But I didn't
Right.
have the money, so I got it. Came back, took the urinalysis, uh, and then took my sleep meds, tongued it so I didn't have to actually take it because I'd be sleepy, and waited for the house manager person to go to bed, drove to Dana Point from Laguna Beach, and the three of us, my girlfriend and her roommate, we all smoked in the back. And, it was great for a while. And then about a couple hours later, I had to go back. And there's something about when you take, say, like, let's just use 10 hits, right? You're still good. But then you take that 11th one, and for some reason, that just kicks you over the cliff. Well, I found that spot and I went way over the cliff, and I still had to drive home. And yeah, so I dropped off my girlfriend at the house, went up the street,
Wow.
correctly took a left turn. And then when I tried to make the next right turn, I went way too far over, took out like a tree that was like this, and then got
Oh
wedged
shit.
between a fire hydrant and a stop sign, and kind of recreated that scene from Austin Powers where he just goes like front and back, trying to get the million
Right.
point. I mean, it's hard to lie after a while when they find like 15 different foils with burnt shit on it. So yeah, I mean, I went to jail that night. Didn't have anybody's phone number memorized, but yeah, I had that concussion. Couldn't remember phone numbers. Didn't really want to call the bail bondsman because this is my fault. Nobody else should have to pay my bail. And then I did get bailed out because my dad was just like he figured out where I was and he didn't like not being able to talk to me, so he bailed me out. Then I had to go
Nice.
back a while later for the rest of the sentence, which was total 45 days in Theo Lacey facility in Orange County.
Well, that sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it was great, man. It was great. You know, the food's
So
great, but the people are better.
for sure, for sure. Man, that's crazy. Now I'm glad you're sober now and you're staying with your dad. How many days now you been?
I haven't checked in the past day or two, but a little over 50, probably like 53 or so.
Nice, dude. That's a good chunk right there. And how you feeling overall physically? I mean, I know that I still feel like shit sometimes that it's been 6 months.
I still feel, yeah. I mean, like I know it'll get a little bit better because I just went through all this, feeling better. Well, I mean, ironically, that's the day that I relapsed, but I was feeling a lot better physically at that point, and I'm getting catching up to that date. So I'm hoping that it just one day gets better like it did before, and I'm sure it will, man.
If I can come back from 40 years of drinking, you can come back from this for sure, man. Come back with fury. That's a little story about some dumb shit you did while you were smoking fentanyl, which is crazy, man. Tell me more about that aspect of it, because I had a friend of mine stay here. He was coming off of fentanyl. He stayed with me for 2 weeks. I know his father, go way back. So I mean, I knew his son, and he said you smoke it because if you do it other ways, you can die. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was my thinking. Like, looking back now, it's only like 10% sound and 90% junkie logic, but um I did it mostly because I was, well, when I started smoking fentanyl, and this was the first time I'd ever really smoked fentanyl or done fentanyl, like specifically like free base kind of fentanyl, just like the powder. And
Sure.
I had just gone through a breakup shortly before I went to rehab. I was on Suboxone during or for like 5 years before that, and for the most part didn't relapse more than I did like once or twice for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but I would always inevitably go back on it. So I knew enough about Suboxone that when I got my shit stolen at a park in Corona, that not only would I go through withdrawals just like any other opiate, but they would be significantly worse than just like coming off of Norcos or whatever because of how strong it is. And it would last 1 to 2 months before I was like anywhere close to better. And in rehab, that's actually what I was mostly withdrawing from is the long period of time that I was using Suboxone to stay off of other drugs. I just happened to hit fentanyl really hard before that. And the reason I did that again was because I got my Suboxone stolen. They also took my psych meds, which
Oh well.
did not help. And I still had no place really to go. But I did not want to be on the street when I was that mentally not sound and really hadn't been completely on the streets before that. And I didn't want to figure it out dope sick, you know?
Right.
So I was with somebody who was using fentanyl, and I was about 3 days out from my last Suboxone. And that's about the time that you start actually getting sick. Um, and I had that person shotgun through a straw, like a hit that they took, because I didn't really want to die that day, like my
Right.
first hit, you know, like I mean, it gets darker than that, but like that day I was like, dude, I don't want to be the guy who takes one hit and dies. Like that's not the way I want to go out, you know? And
Yeah.
and then I felt like the pins and needles go in, and I was like, oh dude, I took too big a hit, you know? And
Mm,
I mean I didn't though. Like it was fine. And it was the first time I'd felt it, and I just didn't know that sensation because it's such an intense feeling at first, and then it just goes away. You know, like it goes away in an hour or two, maybe three, especially once you start using a lot. So that was like a little before Thanksgiving. No, that was sometime in December, and then uh I went from the first hit to a gram a day in about a month and a half, which all
Wow.
stemmed from when I used a bunch of meth and needed to still sleep because I had a job.
So you said you were taking bar Xanax, right? Too on top of that, were you getting those prescribed or through somebody that got them prescribed, or were you buying them off the street?
They were street Xanax, but I was buying them off of the dark net. So
Right, but isn't there now, and as we know, cases where people have died from ODing because there's fentanyl in bars, right?
probably, I mean, I know there is cases of that, and I mean, the only reason I don't think they were in those ones is because I gave them to people that didn't do fentanyl and they didn't die.
If the other people don't die, these must be okay for me because man, I got a tolerance, right? So how fast do you build a tolerance for it for fentanyl?
Fast. I mean, if you're using around the clock all day, by 2 weeks or so, you start noticing that you're not getting you're not getting that nodding out sensation, and but you can probably get it, but you got to work for it, and that's really fast. Like that's insanely fast. That's like the difference between like with regular opiates, it's like the difference between cocaine and crack, like the way that the effects leave you just so fast that it's like a whole different drug. But for like if you take Norcos, they last like 6 hours and they still work for months and months and months before the doctors give you more. Fentanyl's never really been designed for that, and I don't know how or why it got on the streets besides being strong. But now
Well,
there's nothing else that people can do except for fentanyl because they're used to it.
well, check it out. I did fentanyl about a month and a half ago when I got surgery on my prostate. So that's exactly what they used, 100%. But with the doctor monitoring it,
Right.
So odds of me ODing were pretty slim.
Yeah, but it's an incredibly powerful painkiller. It doesn't even feel very euphoric at all. Like it's a terrible, terrible recreational drug.
Well, yeah, sounds like it. So the first time, how did you end up getting to where you're like, I'm gonna smoke fucking fentanyl?
But I knew I was gonna get sick, and I knew that I'd probably spend a hell of a lot more money for a drug or an opiate that was significantly less powerful and didn't last nearly as long between purchases. Like if I found pills or something, which is what I did like all through my addiction until I got on Suboxone, those would be extremely expensive, and I'd only get like a handful of them, and they wouldn't even get close to what I need to even stay well. So really, fentanyl was my only option, and either that or
Right.
withdrawal.
So it sounds to me like the the coming down from it is so long, just like the worst alcohol hangover you could ever have, but it lasts like a month and a half, 2 months. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, like the majority of it will be a week or two, but there's residual effects. Like you'll get this like chill that starts in your stomach and it just like goes out. It's such a weird feeling. Um, and everybody has different withdrawal symptoms. Mine, when I was in rehab, were a lot worse long term because of the Suboxone, and the half life on that is like, I don't know, like 10 times as long as fentanyl. So the thing about
Right.
fentanyl is like for those 2 weeks, they're probably the worst withdrawals you'll go through because it's a short acting drug and it's so incredibly powerful, and Suboxone is also powerful, but it stays in your system so much longer that your body just slowly gets better and better and better. And I kind of had the best of both worlds because I had introduced fentanyl after a long habit of Suboxone.
How has that affected? I know alcohol for me affected a lot of my relationships and just in general, just everything relationships. How do you think that affected your life with drugs and alcohol? Especially, well, you weren't really a big drinker, were you?
No, alcohol was never really my thing. With my friends, they were all kind of, I didn't have a large group of friends, and no matter what, like my friends always smoked weed and drank. So they did worry about me because I was doing, harder stuff, but they also liked cocaine. So, I mean, there's only so many rocks you can throw at a glass house, you know what I mean? Um, but I mean, I did cocaine with them too. I just also did my stuff. So I, uh, I don't know. I mean, I know it was bad, but I think it was different depending on the relationship. I know my dad, who had was going through addiction the whole time I was going through addiction. Honestly, like he's only been sober for about 4 or 5 years, and he's
Okay, right.
64, I think. So he knows what was going on, and I mean, I see now that my attitude and the overall way I carried myself was a little more standoffish and isolating, and I realized that now. I realized it then, but I really see it now, you know. But with my 11-year relationship, that's a little more involved because I lived with her, and I mean we shouldn't have been together, man. We shouldn't have been together in general, but with me on drugs, like it was absolutely incompatible because I would push her away by isolating and then feel isolated because she withdrew, and it just fed this cycle of neither of us getting what we needed, and it lasted 11 years, dude.
Wow. That's a stint, man. So, one thing I talked about in the past, and I asked, previous guests. So, from the moment you get up, or when you get up, or how many days you're up, at the height of your addiction, what would a 24-hour period look like?
The way my dad explains it, like, cause he watched me do the last month where I was doing a gram and a half or a gram a day. That was probably the worst it was because I I don't take 10-minute breaks when I work because like I just sneak my vape. I take hits, and I only needed cigarette breaks. That's all I really ever needed. So I started taking 10-minute breaks, and not just two of them in my 8 hours, like two or three at least, just to go to my car to smoke fentanyl. So I'd wake up, right?
Wow.
I'd wake up, I'd barely wake up in enough time to get there, and then I'd still come out here, put some in a foil, and smoke on the patio that I'm at now. And then, I mean, if I was smoking meth, because like some of the times I would smoke in meth too, because like I would start at the beginning, I would start to get like sleepy and shit because I just hit it, and so I'd use the meth to bring it back up, and then I would get to work. I definitely smoke more when I got to work, in the car, and then I'd go in when there was like maybe a minute to walk from my car to the place I was working, and then I'd work for 2 or 3 hours, take a break, take a 10, go smoke, come back, and then I knew lunch would be coming pretty soon, so I would do that, and then I would go out on lunch and smoke pretty much the whole half hour because I wasn't getting like super high towards the end. I wasn't even getting high at all. I was just continuing that
Right.
like numb feeling. And so I would do that, and then I go back in sometime before the closing time. I would go back out for another 10, and then finish up my job and then leave and smoke before I left. Sometimes I was sitting there for like an hour, dude. Like I was smoking the fentanyl the same, like the way that tweakers are traditionally terrible with time because they're just sitting there twisting the bowl and stuff. Like they lose track of time. It's literally just one more
Right.
hit from an instant to an instant. Like just one more. I was doing that with fentanyl, and like I just it wouldn't go away, man. Like I just like I couldn't smoke myself into unconsciousness, which is what I was trying to do, and so I would just keep going. I ran out
Wow.
of time in the day at a certain point, and I'd be like, "Shit, I got to get home. It's been like 2 hours since the work let out." And then I get home and I'd smoke a bunch, and then go in and eat something and pass out on the couch.
Yeah, and then get up and do it all over again.
What your first dose, especially like if you're like getting it from a doctor and you're in excruciating pain a lot and you're opiate naive, like you're gonna probably just crash. You just kind of wake up and time has passed, you know. And that's kind of the way it is at the beginning, and I think that's what people like because before that you are very like numb and mellow, and ideally you don't make yourself nod out completely, because then you can't feel it. You just basically anesthetize yourself completely, you know, like general anesthesia, but
Right.
self-administered. It is kind of like that. I mean, but if you do it right, which most of us don't because we are addicts and we want more, then you can kind of ride under that, like ride the wave and not knock yourself out, but you always end up like nodding out. So
Yeah, that looks rough, man. I mean, like you're just teetering on consciousness. That's crazy. there's so many young kids out there now. I don't think a lot of people are trying to get addicted to fentanyl. That's not something you just go out and, it's a completely different. What would you tell any if you could talk to your 15 or 14-year-old self, what would you tell yourself?
I don't know, I could say a lot of things. I wouldn't have listened though. I definitely wouldn't have listened. If I would have listened, just to find another way, because I think the biggest thing actually, it wasn't ever really what drug. I had this weird and probably not very unique desire to need to hit bottom so hard that I felt valid when talked about things. And it's the more you think about it, especially on the other side after you've lived it, it sounds ridiculous and it is, but I needed that. Like there was something about it. All the people I identified with, um, musically and in like writing and popular culture and stuff, were people that were alcoholics that struggled with that, and most of the most beautiful art were like drinking songs about like how they've hit so low,
Yeah.
and I was obsessed with that misery. And I mean, depression since I was a kid obviously is a big part of that, and I still have that. I just learned to deal with it differently, you know
Yeah.
but I was obsessed with the darkness, and I still am, like, but it's just now it's more, I acknowledge that it's for the appreciation of art and not a model for how to live. you know
Yeah, that definitely makes a big difference. Give me a couple of instances like crazy shit that just being out there on the streets.
let's just say supermarkets. Let's say there's like three supermarkets in a row in a strip, right? And then they have that alley behind it for loading and all that stuff. So I just drove down those and I found these two people, and I was like, hey, where I can get fentanyl? And like, do you have any? What can I do? But I started doing what I didn't like to do, but I didn't know any other way to get it. And then I found out that basically every single motel, like especially the cheaper it gets, that's where all the drug
Mhm.
dealers are. And now I know that. I
Yeah.
learned that a little late, but yeah, I never actually went into a motel either. All I did was I met people outside and asked them, and then they got me the drugs. And then,
Sure.
believe it or not, dude, I actually didn't have to kick off or kick back very much for fentanyl. Now, tweaking that whole culture with meth, those are the shady people, man. Like their brains ain't working, dude. Like it's sketchy. It's so sketchy, man. And they all think I thought I was a cop because I had a black Chevy Cruze at the time, like the hatchback, and apparently that's a cop car. And
Oh, wow.
I could not get anybody to sell to me at that point. And I was just like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, I'll smoke it with you. Aren't they not allowed to do that? Like, I just could not convince the tweakers that I was also a tweaker. I don't know. It's more just like being with people while they stole a bunch of shit so that they could fund their addiction. That's
Sure.
the most sketchy part. Honestly, like everybody's sketchy on the street because they have to be, but it's more because they're on the street than because they're on
Right.
fentanyl. The fentanyl actually just holds them back. Like they could be a lot
Sure.
sketchier if they weren't putting themselves in a near coma all the time. They the ones that get taken advantage of, bro, because they're fucking trying to hit it so often that they're just like this. It's like you're gonna get your stuff taken, man. You're not conscious, you know.
Right.
So, but tweakers, dude, they're just like they're alert about things that aren't actually there. You know what I mean? Like
Elaborate on tweakers versus fentanyl addicts.
that's right, dude. I mean, it's just like I did both, and I saw both cultures, and they're very different within the same. There's two different cultures within the same kind of culture, especially like within the being on the street. And I mean, it's all ugly, dude, but it's just a whole different game between the two, and they're both just so destructive in such polar opposite ways. Because honestly, dude, like this, the nihilistic bullshit that I am so fond of is really just fuel for the fire. And I mean, I'm never gonna stop. Like, I mean, Fight Club is like my philosophy. Like you are not a beautiful and unique snowflake. Like that's how I feel about the world. I'm a very, very cynical type person, and like we're all just meat sacks, dude. We're not, you know,
Yeah.
like I don't see us as God's children and stuff. But like but why does that mean, just because I don't believe in the Christian God, why does that mean that I can't adopt something that might help me? You know, you know what I mean? Like when it comes to some sort of spirituality, because dude, there's something going on. I don't care if it's just the laws of physics. There's something governing all this that I gotta believe in, or otherwise I'm gonna end up killing myself with drugs or alcohol or whatever.
Yeah.
Because just because I don't drink, that doesn't mean I ain't gonna die from alcohol one day. Like that just means I haven't drank yet.
The internet's a powerful place, so I wanted to let people know where. Let's see. So, as far as job wise, you are available now. What location in California are you, and what kind of work are you looking for? And let's see if we can't get some networking going.
Yeah, I'm in Riverside, California, and well, kind of Corona, California, and man, I'll do anything. Right now, I'm really not worried about what it is. I'm strong and sober.
Future Nate, where are you in 20 years from now? Tell me what you're doing in your life.
I will either be stable in a different state, hopefully, one that has similar culture but isn't freaking California, um, and doing a lot of music as well. Maybe Tennessee because Nashville's over there, and that's what Hollywood used to be. LA in general, or living in a van down by the river. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
One of the two.
You get the last word of the day. Tell people what's up with fentanyl and why should people not fuck with it.
Some people just need to find out for themselves, but if you're gonna find out for yourself, just know that by the end of it, you just, not even in the cliche sense, in the actual literal sense, you may not make it out of it. And it's not even from overdose. It's just you get into this place where you are so helpless and so aware of your helplessness that getting clean doesn't make sense and dying does. And that's a pretty dark place to be. So just know that if you're going to do it anyway, that's where it ends up, or overdose. But either way, there's no jails or institutions usually. It's just death. So
Wow, man, that's deep on a final note. Hey, listen, it was great having you on the show, and I look forward to having you back again. And
yes, sir.
we'll put stuff in the links down below. Try to help Nate out. I'm Rodney. He's Nate. This is Breaking Chains. Hope you had a great day. Peace.